oftentimes when we go through our darker seasons, we isolate. We even if we're highly social people, we isolate, and we keep the secrets. We keep it inside, and what it ends up creating for a lot of us, and I'll say us, myself included, is this dynamic where it seems like, man, life is fine for everybody else. As I look around, as I look on Facebook, as I look on YouTube, man, everybody's got 8% body fat. Every other guy's driving a Bugatti. Their vacations in France, and their kids are attractive and love them, and all good stuff. And their dogs are well behaved, or if on rare occasion their dogs misbehave, it's one of those cute misbehaviors that you can video and then share it on Facebook, and everyone goes ah ha ha. But you don't see, oh, here's my dog like doing something really bad or really uncontrollable or whatever. So then the dark becomes isolating, which makes it even harder. It makes it feel, I imagine, even darker. Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. Today's podcast is going to be very special because I, as a constant cynic, as someone who constantly doubts and questions and has alternative opinions, I know that there comes a time in life where what we really need is hope. What we really need is optimism. What we really need is someone to pull us out of the cynicism and help us see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or sometimes not at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes the light is right here, and we need someone to help us see that. So today we have with us in the YouTube studio, we have Jill Garcia, and I'm going to bring Jill in right now. And Jill, first of all, welcome to Leadership Disrupted. We're going to have you tell your story here in just a moment. But I am thrilled and a little scared because I am not Mr. Optimism most of the time. And so I want to make sure that I do a good job of asking you the right questions and bringing not only you to life for the audience, but your book as well. I'm going to share. Your book is called Life's Many Lessons. It's available on Amazon.com. I downloaded it, and again, being transparent, I got through, I think, the first 2 chapters, and I'm going to continue to read it. But it's one of those things where I'm used to, how do I say this? I'm used to edgier, cynical stuff, and I thought, okay, this is good. This is good for me. It's good for me to see to experience optimism and hope, but it's an acquired taste. So it's going to take me just a little getting used to embody that kind of thinking. So why don't we start by you just telling us about you? Tell us what is Jill Garcia's story, and then we'll go from there.
Dan, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I am originally from Colorado. I'm the youngest of 4. I have 2 boxer pups that are my world. Love volunteering with horses, all things horses. And I've been in Nashville for about 17 years and recently just moved back to be closer to family with that life shift. And so really, we all go through seasons in life, some that are good, some that are tougher than others. And it took me years to process some of those tougher seasons. We all go through, whether it's financial troubles, relationships, a divorce, a loss, whatever that looks like, addictions, you name it. There are seasons that every person around you are going through. And until you personally go through the steps of processing and reflecting and not allow it to stop you in fear like it has been limiting your life, do you start living? And so for me, it was very much, it took years for me to not cope in unhealthy ways and realize that I was coping unhealthy. And I wanted to share that so that maybe others that are in that season of darkness to see that there is hope, there is light. We all have lessons that we can learn, and they're little miracles that we need to see around us.
Well, I think that oftentimes when we go through our darker seasons, we isolate. We even if we're highly social people, we isolate, and we keep the secrets. We keep it inside, and what it ends up creating for a lot of us, and I'll say us, myself included, is this dynamic where it seems like, man, life is fine for everybody else. As I look around, as I look on Facebook, as I look on YouTube, man, everybody's got 8% body fat. Every other guy's driving a Bugatti. Their vacations in France, and their kids are attractive and love them, and all good stuff. And their dogs are well behaved, or if on rare occasion their dogs misbehave, it's one of those cute misbehaviors that you can video and then share it on Facebook, and everyone goes ah ha ha. But you you don't see, oh, here's my dog like doing something really bad or really uncontrollable or whatever. So then the dark becomes isolating, which makes it even harder. It makes it feel, I imagine, even darker. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. A lot of times there are three things that when I get conversations and we have talks, or when I do a speaking engagement, it's three different steps. Step one is it takes time to process. It takes time to really recognize and go through, and it's every journey is different for each person. So you can't compare yours to another just because it's a different stage. It's a different season,
Mm-hmm.
and how you process it is different. The second is the comparison loop. That is such a spiral. When we see Facebook, it is the everybody's perfect lives. There are some that are very humanized, and they will share their
Mm-hmm.
openness of some of the bad things. But most people, myself sometimes included, will post the happy, the good, not necessarily the depressing. And so if you're constantly in a bad state and then looking at that, you got to be really careful what you're consuming. And so I love that you said you retreat and you protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding what are those things that work for you. Is it going for a walk and stepping away from things to just breathe and be one with nature? Maybe it's prayer and looking at something different than outside of yourself, asking for help to let go. Maybe it's you have an inner circle, and it could be an inner circle of one, or you need to find a therapist, but somebody to lean on to just recognize that it's human and that you're not this anomaly, that so many of us are going through the same things, and having that support system, but asking for help is so tough.
Yeah, and asking for it from like the right person or people who can give the help. And sometimes we don't have that. That's true. But there are always resources if you're committed enough, if you're creative enough, if you think through. There's always help. I mean, and sometimes I'm going to sound uncharacteristically optimistic, but I guess as I think about it, I have found that sometimes there is help from a higher power. There is help from a source beyond us. Um, Sometimes that takes time. It takes quietness. It takes attention to listen to that guidance. Um, and then I think you said this before when we were talking before the show. Sometimes it takes time. You have to give it the time that it needs in order for the whole thing to fully blossom, for you to realize, oh, here's the goodness within that, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of very personal stories in your book. As you do your speaking, Are there any stories that like particularly resonate with people that you tend to share more often because
Yeah.
this seems more relevant or highly relevant?
Yes. So when I was 20 to 23, I found my first love and thought that this was it. I was never, it was the loss of love and financially being duped of. In Colorado at that time, there was a lot of mortgage fraud. We had just gotten engaged, and I unfortunately trusted not just a man, but his family who owned a mortgage company. They used my credit to buy a
Wow.
house that I could not afford, and I knew nothing in regards to what they were falsifying or doing. I learned a lot about financials and investments and real estate through this process. But at that young age, it's not something that you're really asking those questions, or I did not know that I eventually had to file bankruptcy. And so it took about 10 years to financially recover. You can't get a credit card, you can't get a car, you got to live with roommates, you got to do some things that maybe before I had great credit that it was just such an ego blow to really understand why does this happen. But that just gave me strength. It was a big piece that I now can help others and have a budget tracker and help those that don't understand finances that I never would have understood that. That's a big story of financial plus love and loss of everybody goes through a breakup. Everybody has their first love. That's a second piece of it. So I had the dream of my first being the first person that I was intimate with to be my husband.
Wow.
And I had gotten a really bad car accident. So this was before we got engaged, before we moved in together. I was in an almost life-threatening car accident that I did a 360 all the way up to Estes Park. I used to work there in the summers. And I had to be life flighted to Fort Collins Hospital, Pooter, and had plastic surgery, a brain injury. At that time, I was going to flight school. And luckily, I was somebody who was able to, because of the occupation choice, get occupational therapy. And so it helped me through some of the processing challenges that I had with a brain injury. And during the first 2 weeks of that, I was on lots of medication. I had to be cared for. And my parents wanted the opportunity to meet this gentleman's family. So they took me to stay with him the last week to be cared for. And up to that time, I hadn't really had much alcohol. My parents, it was a dry house, no alcohol in the house. And so I had the worst components of I was on medication with my injuries. I was drinking, which I hadn't really done that before, so I didn't know my limits. And my this person that I trusted and loved took my virginity. And I remember crying the entire time. And I got up and was furious, but my way to protect myself was to sabotage and just try to make him break up with me first. When he didn't, then I committed to myself that, okay, my dream was to marry the person that was my first. And so this was going to be my husband. So I overlooked a lot of red flags that I probably maybe would have noticed before. So what resonates for a lot of people is it is okay to forgive yourself. The choices that you make are your choices, and we have to learn. But you can't hold on to the shame. You can't hold on to the guilt because Jesus forgives us. So we should really forgive ourselves, and we can forgive others, but a lot of times it's harder to forgive ourselves. And that's a big one that took me years of being a workaholic and using alcohol to numb, to not feel those feelings, to actually process and recognize that.
Well, and you had told me that as part of your own personal journey, you had started over 10 years ago writing Life's Many Lessons, but it wasn't ready. It was harder work. It was as if you you needed more time to process. And it's unfortunate that when it does seem to go this way. I don't know that it's actually true, but it seems that when one really challenging thing happens to us, oftentimes it's like just the first wave, and then there's a second wave and a third wave, and maybe that's when we get most overwhelmed, when it just seems I can't get a break. I can't. It's nothing is working out for me, and that can be a pretty dark time for a lot of people.
Absolutely. It is very, it's that you can't climb up until sometimes you hit the bottom. And as much as people will give you recommendations and options, you have to be ready personally to stop and really address it and approach it. And so I think that in my faith walk, God has given me, sometimes it's like a domino that you think that you've gotten past, and then you're going through life a year later and it hits you, it stops you in your tracks and it hits you again, and you thought that you got past it, but you didn't.
Mhm.
And so that was my journey where, for years I unfortunately was a workaholic. I worked 80-hour work weeks. I didn't think about, didn't stop to go to the bathroom like many leaders in corporate America. You don't take lunch breaks. You don't take care of, you're going to your normal doctor's appointments, those things that you just work. So you kind of think that will come later. That in turn causes health issues. And so for me, it was a combination of that my body at multiple times would stop me and be like, nope, you can't really do anything until you handle this. So that for me was, the wake up call. And then the second wake up call was, a gentleman that I call my angel. His name is Christopher, who, I wouldn't let in be vulnerable to men because I was so avoiding letting anybody else in that I could be hurt again. And I was not going to allow that to happen.
For sure.
That he allowed me to see that there are good humans out there again. And that was something that by talking through things and, our faith together and asking questions, it made me kind of jump into things more than I wanted. He would notice when I was emotionally protecting myself more than I did. And so having somebody in your life that would call you out when they know you more than you know yourself and you're ready to, it was frustrating that he would see things before I did. But it was absolutely, I think, an angel that God put in my life that, I think we have those people that are placed in our lives that we don't always know why. But that's a part of the healing too.
When you talk about the strength that your faith gives you, can we unpack that just a little bit? Because I think sometimes it's misinterpreted or misunderstood, as well. If you think God's going to ensure that it's just all going to work out, or that in some ways it's oversimplifying situations or issues. I don't think that that's it. It seems like when you reference your faith, you talk about Jesus forgiving you, Jesus accepting you, Jesus loving you along, and by loving you, I mean loving all of you, the good decisions, the bad decisions, the proud moments, the embarrassing moments, all of that sense that there's an acceptance there, there's a love there. That seems what's most important now, but I don't want to interpret it for you. I just think that you and I talked before, we come from a slightly different place. I'm a little more cynical. I'd call myself agnostic. I'm not a non-believer, I'm not a believer, but I have a deep respect for many people who do believe. So I guess, can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. So I think faith could mean so much to so many people. And to me, it has evolved over my life. When I was growing up, I was baptized as a baby. I was in a very strong Lutheran home that you went to church every Sunday and you did it out of ritual. You did things out of, if I do this, then I'm going to get this. And that is something that I've learned over time is not the way that Jesus is. Jesus for me was, he loved all people, those that were unlovable, the sick, the ostracized, the people, the drunks, the ones that were hurting and broken. Those are the people to love on, because we all need love, and we're supposed to love God and love people. That's the thing that Jesus taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had my bankruptcy fallout, I found this really great church in Boulder, Colorado, or Lafayette, called Flatirons Community Church. And it was very much a Me Too church. It was, they had a program called Shift, that it was, if you are dealing with addiction, if you're dealing with, whether it's alcohol, a substance, a porn, a sex addict, like all people are people, and Jesus loves you all. And it's not get your life together and then go to Jesus. It's no, Jesus forgave us. He gave us the grace by dying on the cross, and we can't do anything to live up to that. He gave us grace, and there's nothing that we can do to live up to that. It's just given. It's a gift. And so for me personally, in my walk, I've had two very distinct miracles. One, that car accident that I should have died. I couldn't see. I thought I was blind. All I saw was the color purple. And I remember somebody holding my hand and saying, the help is on the way. They're coming soon. Just stay with me. And it was very vivid, but all I could feel was them holding my hand and seeing the color purple. When I came to and looked at the doctors, asked every doctor, who can I say thank you for staying with me and keeping me awake? Every single person I asked said nobody was there. It was 100%. Not everybody gets that gift, but for me, I had an angel, a true angel that held my hand. And that is why I'm alive today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a gift. My second gift that is kind of a vice, but also the gift of reminding myself I can't do it alone. I have to let go of control, is because of not dealing with the stress and not dealing with my emotions and stuffing all of that down and coping in unhealthy ways. I have developed ulcerative colitis. And so there are lots of people that deal and live with diseases or health issues every single day. Some worse, some harder. You can't compare yourself. But for my walk, it was a challenge to know that I may not make it to the bathroom. And that's just the way I have to live. And knowing that when I would try to will it myself, those were worse situations than if I'm on an airplane and I cannot do anything because the seatbelt sign's on. All I can do in that moment is pray. And I have had the biggest, most sense of peace in those moments I am on the verge of, to be frank, shitting myself.
Yes.
But I just can't think of anything else. I have to be in prayer. I have to be in meditation. Yeah. I have to be in gratitude. And that is now my morning routine, where every single day I start with writing down the things that I'm grateful for within the last 24 hours. So by trying to live a life through gratitude and letting go, you have good days that you do it, and you have tougher days, but there are days that when I start with my morning routine of my walk without my phone, with just me and God, and prayer, and then devotional, and then doing the 5 things I'm grateful for, it's a much more intentional, peaceful day than when I start with my cell phone right out of the gate, looking at all the meetings and all the things and the fires that I have to deal with that day, that then your thoughts get in the way. You try to control it all, and then it spins out of control. And those are the fire days that are just shit hits the fan.
Yeah. And sometimes literally.
Yes.
So it prompts one thought from from me in that, I mean, I know work life has always been challenging. I guess I'm assuming for thousands of years, but I know for my, decades on the planet, work life is stressful, or for a lot of people, and yet there does seem something uniquely more challenging in the last, I want to say 10 years, maybe 5 years, post-pandemic. It was happening even pre-pandemic, but definitely post-pandemic. It just feels like this convergence of we have cell phones on 7/24. They're feeding us information and misinformation. We have news media, entertainment media, business media, sales media, and we don't necessarily know which is which. What feels like social media is actually someone trying to sell us something, and then it feels like, I mean, I hate to say people have gotten worse, but there are a lot of charlatans. There are a lot of liars. There are a lot of, and maybe it was always so. Maybe, but I think through technology, they have easier access to us. Maybe that's what it is. Where we're just so much stuff happening that when I was growing up, if I made a poor decision, certainly bad things could happen. But I think there's a potential for really bad things to happen today that maybe weren't possible 30 or 40 years ago. Maybe I'm making that up. What's your sense of it, that in
Yeah.
terms of just the potential for dark stuff to happen, like really dark stuff, in today's world?
Well, I think there's just the numbers in COVID, that the amount of lives taken during COVID was not necessarily from COVID. It's more from the suicides and the depression and the darkness that took over people.
Yeah.
And those numbers are astonishing. Kiddos that were in families that were not good situations, that had to stay home in those terrible situations, like it made it worse.
Mhm.
And parents under the balance of, at least when their kids were away, I did executive
Right.
coaching with families of, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? I realized a strategy of, I need to go into a closet and scream into a pillow so I don't scream at my kid, and then feel the guilt and the spiral again. That I think life just kind of slapped us, and it was a wake up call for a lot, that we were leaning towards this, that we're now thinking of things differently. When it comes to social media, when I was in school, we didn't have social media. So bullying, it happened, but then it was, the next week was a different kid. My nieces and nephews, the social bullying, the level of that will always be there. An image, the charlatans that will bait kiddos to share and then extort them, based on those images. Same thing with adults. That technology wasn't ever there before. Same thing with algorithms. How smart technology with AI, of, we're having this conversation, and I guarantee I'm going to look at my phone later and have an ad of some kind based on what I shared here. Just there's
Yeah.
the algorithms out there. That my biggest takeaway for me personally, and in conversations with my inner circle, is just be very cautious of your consumption. Limit, if you set a timer on your phone so that it actually notifies you if you've gone over that mark of what you want to time on your phone with Facebook or Instagram or whatever that is. Maybe stop, give yourself a time limit of how much you're looking at the news, and look for more positive outlets, because the more negative you're going to go. The more positive, the more positive podcasts, the more positive books, the more positive conversations. That's an algorithm that will trigger, and you'll see more of that stream. So we almost have to have kind of a opposition against social media.
I was telling my wife a few days ago, I said, I start with rule number one. I don't believe any of it. I just start with, they're all lies, and until proven otherwise, as opposed to, hey, I'll believe, and unless there are red flags that cause me to be suspect, I just feel safer saying no. I'm going to assume every what appears to be newscast, every podcast, everything. And maybe this comes more naturally to me because I am cynical, but I'm just amazed by the volume of things that are not true, not accurate. And it seems like what's not true is oftentimes sexy and interesting and exciting. So it gets shared and it gets reposted and it gets talked about. Whereas the truth tends to be mundane,
Yeah.
um, and and sort of not worthy of sharing with others. So that's a unique element for people today. It can be uniquely isolating for people. And then when let's say a person goes through troubling times, it's easy to get sucked into that phone and just scroll because it's an escape. But that escape may be harming you, because that's all you're doing is you're escaping. You're not solving.
Yeah.
You're disassociating from things, which sometimes can be helpful. Sometimes you want to separate for a while, but it is a challenging world that we live in, which it kind of brings me back to the whole reason for wanting to have this conversation with you, because um, I I think the world does need to be reminded that there is hope. There is, maybe not in every struggle. I mean, I hate to say to someone, "Hey, what you're going through, there's always a purpose." Sometimes there's not. Sometimes crappy stuff is just crappy stuff. But now you can make it. You can give it purpose. I think you can decide. You can decide what you want it to mean. Um, but some people are just mean. Um, so I know you do keynote speeches, workshops, coaching. Um, why do I guess what messages resonate most with people when you're having either individual conversations or large group presentations? What do you feel like people need to hear most from you?
I think it's one, actualizing that when you're in the dark place, give yourself some grace that you're doing the best you can. And, if you we all have heard of in the corporate world, SMART goals. If you've set a SMART goal that so is unattainable, you're just going to keep letting yourself down. And then it's that spiral of the numbing of all you can do. You're exhausted. The last thing you want to do is go exercise or do the healthy choice of eating well. You're going to scroll just because it doesn't take any
Yeah.
energy, but so I think it's giving yourself the grace of, if you have a plan, it's okay to modify it and shift it. So
Mhm.
don't do all of the strategies that resonate with you. Pick one and try that consistently. So just like exercise, we've all heard the analogy of, you're going to have to do the hard work, and it's going to hurt in different areas that you haven't worked out or lifted in a while.
Mhm.
But once you get through that, you'll feel stronger, you'll feel better, and you'll start to get more persistent. Same thing with sitting in peace. Don't give yourself a goal of sitting and meditating for 10 minutes, because if you've gone through scrolling and that's all you do, to 10 minutes is an eternity.
Yeah.
Maybe start with 1 minute meditation. There are really great YouTube, if you Google meditation, breathing
Mhm.
exercises, it will physiologically reset your flight or flight. I think Mel Robbins has a really good podcast on this, that biologically, if you breathe differently, so those 30 seconds or 1 minute resets
Mhm.
can do so many great things for you. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour thing that you want to spend with your kiddo twice a week. Maybe it's, you pick 1 to 1 hour that you both enjoy, not something they enjoy. Compromise.
Yeah.
What is that? It could be playful, of drawing or coloring, or um, who knows? Make it a game, but like explore. Go into the exploratory phase. There's no right way to do something. You got to try and get comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's the biggest thing. To stop staying in the comfort of discomfort.
Mhm.
Move the needle just a little 1%.
I think that's great advice. There was a point in time where I was really worried about the disconnect from my son. I think he was 17 or 18 at the time, and I was just either I was losing him or he was losing me. Or both. And I I remember I just wanted because we just weren't hanging. We weren't hanging out together. I couldn't find anything where there was a mutual interest. And I remember at some point saying to him, okay, tell me something you would like to do that's not like readily available to you, but that I might be able to make happen. What would you like to do? What would you like to? And he said, well, there's a music concert coming up, but it's not here in town. It's in Las Vegas. And I had already decided that whatever it was, like whatever it is, I'm going to say yes. So, I'm not recommending this as an approach because I said yes. Okay, so I said yes. Now tell me what it is. Well, and this goes back a few years, but it was a concert called the Psycho concert. It was basically a heavy metal music festival at a big hotel in Las Vegas for 2.5 days, 30 or 40 different heavy metal bands and lots of different venues. I mean, I grew up with John Denver. I mean, I listened to John Denver and the Carpenters, and so I'm thinking, okay, all right, okay. I said yes, so we went, and I I had to very consciously say to myself, this is about the experience and the time with him, not necessarily about my particular enjoyment of the music. And I still remember it as a highlight for me. It was, first of all, I didn't even know these things happened. I didn't know this kind of music existed. I found that some of it, if you put earplugs in, it actually isn't all that bad. But I had to put something in my so I don't hear the overwhelming sound. Um, and so yes, I'm not even sure what the lesson is there, but something that you said prompted that,
I mean, I
that
think
memory.
that's it. Just try something different. If what you're doing and have been doing is not working, step back
Yeah.
and try something different and have a just a if so this makes me think of a conversation with my mom. I recently moved from Nashville to Colorado, and my parents would come to visit and a lot of times fly. So I was used to having the itinerary of the flight to Nashville and the flight home, but they were flying to Nashville and not flying back because they were so graciously going to drive the U-Haul home with me in my car to help me move home. And so my mom will worry, and not ask the question. And so I didn't recognize that 3 weeks leading up to this move, she told me her itinerary. And I just out of habit asked her, okay, so what's your return flight? How long are you staying? And she festered with that and let it grow into this
Oh,
huge
thinking that it meant something.
thinking that it meant something to me of that. Did I overstate my welcome? Until the week of, they were about ready to depart, and I asked her again, what is your return flight? Not thinking. And so she finally said, well, I thought we were driving back with you with the U-Haul. Are we overstepping our welcome? And I just stopped. And I said, Mom, how long have you been festering over this? Oh my goodness, of course not. Like, this is just habit. I have a lot going on
Yeah.
in my own head. This is not about you. My apologies, but I want you to feel open to be able to ask me questions when you feel like it's tough. I think you got to open yourself up to be vulnerable. If you're vulnerable, it will open up to somebody else to do the same.
What I like about your overall approach is you're not claiming that it's easy. In fact, most of it is the hard stuff, but being willing to step into the natural tension, either the tension with yourself, like I don't really want to do that thing, or tension with someone else. Um, we do create the monsters in our mind that are oftentimes, most of the time, much bigger than the actual monsters in real life. And so that's interesting that once the word is said, then it just goes away, and it's truly just a communication error, nothing more than that.
Yes, and that in my coaching experience with these high executives, they're used to all their employees standing down and telling them what they want to hear when they go home. Um, it's a different approach. Maybe they're tired and they also can bulldoze at home, and so it's a matter of everybody's human. We all have our own needs. We're all just doing the best that we can and finding, okay, here's where I'm at. This is what I heard. Please tell me the intention of what you heard or what this means to you, and finding the middle ground of a lot of times naming it, actualizing it, and then it's either it's a bigger thing you guys need to work through, or it's a little blip that, oh my gosh, I totally misunderstood. This is done and we're good.
You know, if there's any one core message I take from this conversation and the book itself, is if you, I guess for each of us, there's got to be hopefully a path toward letting go of shame, letting go of blame, like blaming ourselves or other people, letting go of guilt for ourselves, or feeling that others should be guilty of something, but truly just letting go. And the people that hurt us were doing the best they could. Not that it's, I'm not going so far as to say, hey, forgive everything, forgive all. And maybe that is the very high-minded approach. I'm saying for me, letting go of the blame, the shame, the guilt, the guilting of myself and the guilting of them, and just saying, we're all on our journeys. We're all kind of figuring stuff out. And someone said to me once, because without going into great detail, I got really screwed financially by a boss once. I mean, really, like seriously. Oh man, it was, and I was telling this story over 10 years later, and I would get just dialed up about this story. Righteous anger, righteous indignation, and the person said, well, do you have a sense, has he evolved? Has he changed? Absolutely not. Not only has he not changed, he's still successful. He is still making money by doing this to people. He's still whatever. And the person said, but you know what? He still has to be him. He still has to go through life being that.
Yes.
And that's whether he realizes it or not. You're getting angry because he doesn't realize it. And he may someday, he may not. But you realize it. That's the path that he's been relegated to. And honestly, I feel kind of bad for him. I mean, this other person said that, and I thought, wow, I'd nenever had someone react to my story, because I had told the indignation story about this guy many times, and everyone else was like, oh, that's so bad. That's so sad. Oh, you were wronged. You were whatever. And he was an awful guy. And then this person saying, I kind of feel bad for him, because he has to be with himself day in and day out. He is his own worst punishment, whether he realizes it or not. It took me a while to internalize that and to think, okay. And I mean, it took me a long while, but I think as I look back, really letting go of expecting him to be the villain and me to be the victim, and simply saying, poor guy, this is the path he's on. Sorry that you got to go through that. And maybe you'll evolve. Maybe someday you'll evolve. Who knows?
I don't know about you, but I know when it comes to work, there's almost for a lot of my life, I lived it compartmentalized. So you have work the way it should be, and how ethics and codes should happen, and then you have your personal life. And I think there's a lesson in my book about the lesson for me of corporate America, learning that it's just business. It's not personal. I had a new CFO come in, a new director come in, and I had been doing a job that eventually was basically told that I wasn't adequate. And that was a hard message. That when it took me a while to realize that it wasn't personal for them, it wasn't they were doing what the directive of them to save themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily about me. However, that I went into protect mode and started having conversations with lots of people within the company, and ended up going to the EEOC about things that were happening, that eventually policies from me fighting the man of like, okay, I can't just leave and not say something or do something because there's some injustice happening. That was really painful. I got ostracized. I lost lots of friends that were best friends because I thought that I was like, oh my gosh, how could you be against this company? They took it personal too.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about me. That I had to go up against, and it changed policies for people years later. That I think we can make bigger impact than I think we realize in a lot of situations. The way it's not what happens to you, it's how you handle it.
Yeah.
So when you handle, and if you lean in a way that society says like, well, that's different. How, I can't do the things I can do by myself. I need the strength of something higher than me to be able to handle it, because otherwise I will crumble. And that's the gift, that we have the ability to just kind of look at things a little bit different.
I do see a lot of people who internalize their workplace where it becomes their primary social place. Either very consciously, like, hey, I have friends here, we go out, we do things. But even if they don't have that, the fact that they interact with all of these humans throughout the day is actually, they spend much more time socializing than in their personal life. But then the workplace ends up meaning more than it probably should meaning more to them than is probably healthy, because the workplace, while the workplace ideally is very positive and empowering, but your employer is not your family. The workplace is not your family, unless you have one of those families that every quarter reviews your OKRs. Unless you have one of those families that occasionally says, "Hey, I'm sorry, we have too many sons. We're eliminating your role," or "I'm sorry, it's just not working out." Unless you have one of those kinds of families, the workplace is not a family. It can be family adjacent. I've had some very close workplace relationships where I felt like I had a really close core of people. What is fascinating is, I'm thinking back, even one of my absolutely closest, like, cohesive connections with a group of people, once I left that business, of course, we vowed to stay in touch. We did. We stayed in touch, but then it just drifted and drifted, and eventually everybody kind of moves on, because the reason for our connection was gone. And that doesn't. I'm saying that not with any blame, not with any, there's no judgment at all. It was sort of the natural. It just naturally faded away, which is what it was supposed to do. But then that reminds me, okay, so even my closest workplace connections that's what they are. They're workplace connections. And family is family. Now, unless you work with your family, of course, that throws in a whole nother complication, I suppose.
Yeah. I think that we can't always tell if they're put in our lives forever, or if there's somebody that are intended to be something that you're there for them, or they're there for you, but it's a blip of a season, or is it a longer season? It's just we can only think about the moment here and now, and how are we approaching those around us that we encounter at the grocery
Mhm.
store. Like, take a moment to just acknowledge if somebody's having a bad day. It's not about me. It's maybe, give them a moment to breathe. You have no idea what they're
Yeah.
going through. Or it's in the harder times of road rage in the car. Those moments, we sometimes handle them good, and sometimes give ourselves grace of, I'm going to try again tomorrow to handle it better.
So you've had a couple of circumstances where, just based on how you describe them, I imagine you had to eventually cut yourself off from a significant part of the people who had been a part of your life, and then found yourself feeling alone and isolated. The reason I bring this up is because I've talked to a fair number of people who say, I feel lonelier than I've ever felt before. I feel like, because of things that have happened, I don't have a support structure. I'm trying to rebuild it, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know where to go. Or um, what do you say to people who, like, in this very moment, feel
Yeah.
like, for whatever reason, they're alone?
Well, this is actually a perfect time and stage in my life, because I have uprooted from 17 years of a community that I adored, my best girlfriends that took years to build those friendships that were my people. Um, I just ended a 12-year relationship. And so I am starting kind of over. And it's doing the things that you love. Don't people please, and do the things that you think people will expect or need from you. It's, for me personally, I love volunteering. There's lots of centers that have equine therapy that use horses for special needs kids. I get time with an animal that I love, and seeing a shift in a kiddo. That's an hour a week for me that brings me pleasure and community. It's also finding the simple things of, for me, grounding in a small group. With church, I have a virtual small group that once a week, yes, it is virtual, but it is an opportunity. FaceTiming with those that maybe are far away, even though you feel lonely. Do you have any far away connections? And then creating new ones. Maybe it may work, it may not. So I am subbing tomorrow in a sand volleyball game. I'm not great at sand volleyball, but I'm going to give it a shot. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't. But putting yourself out there to find and nudge into somebody that could turn and blossom, but also guarding yourself of, if it's not the right chemistry, the right fit, don't make it fit. Ebb
Yeah.
and flow of, go with what works and let go of the things that don't. It's not personal, but it takes time, and give yourself the grace of, right now, I am in therapy to go through this life challenge, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I think it's okay to find a third party that's going to help you with setting boundaries with family. I think we all have crazy families.
Ooh.
For me, I don't have an inner circle here because I left my community. So I'm found a counselor that I get to an outlet once a week to talk to. So take what works for you and give it some time.
Speaking of letting go of blame, shame, and guilt, I did have an epiphany at some point where I was thinking about, like, elements of my own crazy family. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. For my son, I am the crazy family, or we are the crazy family. Like, oh, okay. So what do I do with that? And so, yes, I think when you say we all have them, we all have them. And for some, we are them. But you said something that prompted two questions / thoughts. One is, when it comes to remote, I know that some of us still struggle with, hey, are remote friendships real friendships? Is remote worship still worship? Take this conversation, for example. This is as human as any conversation could be. You and I could be at a Starbucks, having coffee and having this exact conversation. And I do believe the emotional connection between us is exactly the same. The only distinction is that at the end, we can't stand up and hug each other or something.
Right, right.
Can't do that. But I would say to people, don't discount the viability of virtual connections with people. It requires more from you. It requires more from them. You have to be willing to reach up across and be a little more intentional about that. But then I also wanted to ask about the equine therapy, because I interviewed a gentleman. Oh, this goes back several months, who does equine leadership development at a horse ranch in Virginia, and he told me about that experience, and I'd love to hear from you. What is it that you observe? What's the thing that happens between children and horses? There is a thing. What's your take on that?
So to your first question, virtual, it's intention. I think if you are present, and there's a difference. So you and I on this call, my phone is silenced, distractions are put away, and I am here in the moment. That's a very different conversation than what can happen virtually, of being on a call for work, and you have your phone and your alarms are going off and you're setting the oven. You got to be in the moment. And so there is friends that we do once a month virtually that were coworkers 10 years ago, and we meet once a month. Sometimes it's only 2 of us that can join. Sometimes it's 4 of us that can join. But then we also will go on a trip every year. So the combo, like,
Nice.
you can't virtually be there, but you still make up for it when you aren't together in person. My neighbor that I FaceTime with, having an hour where she shows me something in her house that's new. She's trying a new bird feeder. She can actually show me, and I can see what's going on in her life in the real moment versus the surface stuff. It builds a connection, I think. The second question, as far as remind me.
Equine therapy.
Okay, so if somebody would have told me this before I personally saw it, I think I would have said this is hogwash. There's an energy shift, and I think I would have been like, "What are you talking about?" I had the same kiddo when I was in Nashville, an incredible program called Saddle Up, where special needs, it could be on the spectrum of autism to some nonverbal, or you name it, handicap. There's lots of different special needs. My kiddo was nonverbal, and he had no use of legs. And so I was a sidewalker with Dad. I would be on one side, he would be on the other side of the horse. And my role was making sure the safety of him and reinforcing what the therapist was doing. Then there was a leader that was in charge of the horse safety, making sure that the horse was safe. My experience was that a lot of times these kids do not get choices in their day-to-day because everything is so planned for them, that this is an opportunity for them to choose. Smallest little choice of, we would play a game around the arena. Maybe it's potato head, of the dexterity of pushing the nose into the head and being able to pull the reins. That was a lot of core strength of being able to move side to side. There were some days that the kiddo would come in just angry with the weather, hurting, had hip issues, but couldn't really tell this is my problem, and would get joy of being able to choose, yes, I want to go left, I don't want to go right, and getting that energy shift with the horse, that he would be a different kid by the end of the lesson. To the long-term effects of, man, Dad would come in so excited that kiddo is loosening up his hips, that he can now reach down in the covers in the morning to pull himself up, that he was growing actual core strength through the horse, not just
Mhm.
there's mental and physical benefits with the horse. So it depends on the kiddo, what they need, but incredible. The power of what it can do is pretty incredible.
And I've heard the same thing regarding adults with special needs, adults with autism, that there just is some connection, some energy transference, something that happens. So it's just interesting to hear that from you. So we're at the end of our hour, and for those of you who are with us, I would like to do two things. Number one, if you look at the show notes, you'll see that I'm going to include a link to Jill's book on Amazon, so you can download either the Kindle version. Is it available in paperback, or is it just?
It is.
Oh yeah,
There's
okay, yeah.
hardback. Yep.
And you can. It's in hardback, and it's also an audiobook.
It is. Yeah.
So, do you read the audiobook, or did they have someone else do the reading?
It's actually, I found a voiceover recorder that did it for me, and so there's little special nuggets in there that are kind of fun for me. That my parents are from the town of Pueblo, and so the pronunciation. Those that know me and know some of those stories are going to hear a little, I would call them Easter eggs. So it's kind of fun.
Good. Well, Jill, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time with this, and I think you and I, in the spirit of virtual friendships, you and I will not be strangers. We will stay connected, and I'll let you know once this is posted. We'll go from there. So again, those of you who are still with us, if you like this episode, please definitely click the like button. Definitely share this episode. I would love to get the broadest possible exposure for Jill and for life's many lessons. So thank you, Jill. Really appreciate this time.
Thanks, Dan.